Do you remember when you first learned about the concept of open source?
Yeah, so I first got involved in open source when I was at Hewlett Packard. First heard about it. I was managing the CDE team, which is the user interface for Unix. So I was in the Unix lab on the CDE team, and I had about 30 people working on CDE, and we weren't adding a lot of new features because technology had been around for a long time. So we were mostly just fixing bugs and making it work on new hardware and advancing things. And I went to a standards meeting and I discovered that all of the companies in the room had teams that were working on the exact same thing. And not only did we have our own separate code bases, but we would agree on which bugs we were going to fix first. Like we would have these meetings where we would vote on which bugs got fixed. And I thought, then we're all going to go back to our separate companies and, have our engineers all redo this work. So it was very much like my college experience of having people all work on the same projects and write their own individual solutions to it. And it just felt like a waste of effort. That was at the time that Linux was first starting to come out, and come out in a big way that lots of people were using it, and there was not just one user interface. So we had CD on HPUX on all the Unixes, but on Linux they had GNOME and KDE, so they even had competing solutions to it. And I thought, why can't we work with them? Like they know how to work in the open. Why can't we just use that? So that was my first experience with open source software.
It sounds like that your main drive to keep exploring open source was this opportunity to reduce duplicative effort, like kind of industry wide.
It wasn't just to reduce waste. It was like to inspire all the other things we could be doing. Like if you're fixing the same bug somebody else is, that means both of you are not doing, you haven't gotten to the part that you really wanted to do, right? You're taking care of like the basics. So I really wanted to see what we could build together if we work together on it, as opposed to each of us individually having to get there.
When did you first get involved with open source? Like after learning about what the concept was?
So this was around the year 2000, wasn't 2000, somewhere in that time frame. And I met with Helix Code, which then became Symbian, which then got acquired by SUSE. Um, they were the primary drivers behind the GNOME project, and so that was my first experience. I actually remember meeting with Nat Friedman in a restaurant where he had those Blackberries that had little keyboards, and the whole time he was talking to us, he was also like keying in text messages, or they were emails because we didn't really have text messages then, emails to other people. Um, and then I went out to visit them, and I was in my 20s, and I came back and told my manager I think I was the oldest person there. Um, so it's a very young, very new effort to bring this open source into the commercial space. And then I went to Guadec in Copenhagen. That was my very first open source conference to go to. It was still relatively small. The experience I really remember was walking in the door. And as I walked in the door, there was like just a table that you signed in at with one person behind the table. And when I told her my name, she was like, "You're a girl." And she had been trying to decide based on my name whether I was a woman or a man, and there weren't a lot of women in the field at the time. I think a lot of women at that conference was the marketing team from Helix Code. And then I also had an embarrassing moment. It was a one room conference, maybe, I don't know, 100 people. I actually don't know what the size was. And I had this really cute HP laptop. They don't make them anymore. It was much smaller than any laptop we have now. It was an HP 800. But it was running Windows. And of course, it made the Windows boot up sound in the middle of the conference.
Yes, that can be embarrassing indeed, particularly back then.
Yes, yes. But I couldn't get the modem drivers to run on Linux, and I needed to be able to dial in for work.
And Stormy, you were my introduction into open source.
Oh, was I?
Right. So yes, Stormy and I were on a roller hockey team together. And I was in need for a job because the .com I had been working for had recently imploded. And so, yes, through that connection, she actually introduced me to an opportunity that was in the Linux and open source lab, the fledgling Linux and open source lab at Hewlett Packard in 2001.
That's pretty cool.
and we got to work together.
Mhm.
I can only share the experience of stepping into a room where people look at me like, "Oh, you're a girl," because they were telling me the same thing, that they saw the name in the emails and they were like, "This looks like a, I don't know, in some language, I think my first name resembles more. I think that's more like a name that they give to men as opposed to women," and so they were surprised, and I'm like, "Yep, I'm a girl." So
Well, a
they,
lot of the Latin languages probably assume an O at the end is yeah, masculine.